had been called back to Japan for a tour that would last nearly 3 weeks and eat up most of the month of March for you in 1984. 3 weeks in a foreign country, way on the other side of the world. What did Mel think when you'd have to take a long trip like that?
I think the reason I went back to Atlanta, I went back to Atlanta to help Melanie in terms of, okay, this, now it's one thing that we're married and I'm not home every night, but we're married, I'm not home every night, and she's by herself with a baby.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And that's a lot. And so her father had retired, and so they moved to Mississippi because Melanie's mother is from a little town about 40 miles south of Jackson called Crystal Springs. And so they moved back to Mississippi. And the other thing, when the baby showed up and Mel's parents knew that I was for real, that was the healing of all the wounds.
Oh, good.
And everything was cool. So when I went back to Atlanta for that reason, because when I'm there, I'm coming home every night. But now I'm getting these opportunities to go to Japan come up, and she understood that too. Okay, you're going to be gone 3 weeks, but when I come home, I'm either home doing nothing, or if I am wrestling, I'm wrestling here locally in this territory, and I'm coming home every night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, I went back to Atlanta to help her in that way. Like, okay, it's one thing if I'm in Baton Rouge and I'm not home every night and gone half of the time, and then I go to Japan for 3 weeks and I come back and and so it's almost like you're never home. But in Georgia, it was I was home every night unless I was going on a trip to Japan. So.
And what about the office reaction? Like, how did Ole and, the folks in charge, Barnett, all of them react to their hottest heel leaving?
And they were fairly understandable about it because, I mean, you run programs, and actually it's probably good, that, because if I'd go to Japan for like 3 weeks, I mean, it would be maybe a whole month before I went back or longer. But, I think the most I went to Japan, I think I did like 3 or 4 tours in a year, but I mean, one would be a 5-week tour. That's the longest, a couple of 4-week tours, a couple of 3-week tours, number 2, I grew to love Japan. And I mean, you talk about, man, why couldn't we have it this way in the United States? Okay, you go over there, you're on a guarantee. You're going to get paid at the end of the tour in cash, and and again, it's kind of like no checks because wrestlers would fear that, well, I'll get home and then this check will bounce or something. Mm-hmm. So the only thing you paid for the entire time you were in Japan was your food.
Pretty reasonable.
I mean, the travel, everybody traveled on a bus. All the hotels were paid for. All you had to pay for was your food. And my gosh, had that been true over here, wow.
And that's as opposed to what you were dealing with in the WWF, which is like you're paying for your own hotel, you're paying for rental cars. Like there's a lot of overhead expense. Plus you're paying for your food while you're out and about. Going to a gym, there's so many things that you've got to pay for. Where Japan, pretty cushy situation for a wrestler. I spoke to Jake about working in Japan previously on an episode of The Snake Pit, and he pointed out that he really didn't enjoy himself over there. He'd actually referenced that the toilets are built right into the floor, where you kind of have to like hover over it if you got to like take a dump or whatever. So, Ted, was that ever something that got to you when you were working over there?
Okay. you know, if you're in a public bathroom, okay,
Hmm.
but in your hotel room, no, there's a toilet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so I just made sure that I took care of business before I left that hotel because he was. Well, it's true. I mean, they looked they were, you know, they looked like urinals. Like, I mean, like a but they were, gosh, I don't know. They were, I don't know.
Look them up, folks. You can
Yeah,
find pictures of this
I
on the
mean, you
internet.
know, they were long and kind of rectangular, and you would, yeah, you would squat over that and go to the bathroom.
Jake was funny when he was talking about it because he's like, so I'm over here eating all this food that I don't normally eat, and then when I've got to go relieve myself, I've got to deal with that situation. He was like, so could get pretty messy.
Yeah, yes.
um,
I would say some of the bigger guys
oh, could you imagine?
take two chairs, right? Put one chair on one side of their urinal and one chair on the other side. And so put one cheek on one chair and one cheek on the other chair. Let her rip.
There you go, folks. The $1 Million Man just solved that problem if you ever over there in Japan. So give that some thought.